The night closes in, children, so gather around the flickering glow of the computer screen for another episode of Destroy All Clickbait, in which we poke at the ashes of the internet and see what ghouls emerge. I'm Adam. With me, as always, are Ing and Avi.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm here.
And yes, it's midsummer, so we've as always got some stuff to show you. I did think it was a little interesting. I guess it was 2 shows ago now. We were talking about QAnon, and
oh yeah, that blew up again for some reason.
Yeah. By the time that show hits the air, it's going to be this week where everyone, and it's weird because some people have been talking about it for months. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the whole Roseanne thing.
Yeah.
And yet, for some reason, this week there was a whole thing about it. I don't know why.
There was like a report on it.
Oh yeah?
Oh.
Who was it specifically?
For the life of me, can't remember, but it was a thing that, like, this is, a look into the conspiracy theory that is driving Trump's most radical supporters sort of thing, and it, like, talked about Gamergate and this stuff, and I remember that it specifically framed it like, oh, that this seemed like a harmless here's a guy who showed up with a gun at a preschool, or something, demanding to know where the, I don't know, child slave pits or whatever are. I'm not getting this right. I should stop talking.
No, it was, there was the guy who was on a dam. That was the one I remember.
Dam, that's it. That's right. He drove his thing onto the Hoover Dam looking for...
The Hoover Dam.
I guess looking for where they keep Megatron or whatever.
The Hoover Dam.
Yeah, here's the thing. They allow tours of the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam is a very big building.
Yeah.
Most of it is taken up by the power plant. Because it's a very big power plant.
Yep. No, and yet, somehow, he thought that was the best way to go to deal with the secret conspiracy, which is keeping us all in chains, apparently, while Trump is doing nothing but good, and the fact that we think that Trump is bad is just further proof of the conspiracy, apparently.
Okay.
But that's how it works. It's literally just opposite land for them. So
here's the thing I actually wanted to discuss.
Okay.
Yes.
To a debate, because somebody did a good thing saying that QAnon is basically the only way Trump's most, like, venomous supporters can coincide the idea of this God Emperor Trump with the reality of what we get.
Right.
And,
no, that makes sense.
And it's like, otherwise, 100%. Because it's like, well, they invested a lot of it. Some of them might have lost friends and family, and thus now there's a huge investment bias. So there's a huge incentive to believe outrageous things. And meanwhile, my pet theory of it is that most of them do not actually believe it. Like, believe it when we talk about, like, what do you believe in your heart of hearts? And all that. Yeah. And it is basically an equivalent to, like, a ARG, where they are following it along to feel excited there, and basically that it's fascist Slenderman. Where people don't believe it.
Slenderman.
Yeah, people don't genuinely believe it, but it's fun to pretend to believe it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it goes a little further than that, because they don't deep down believe it, but it's the kind of thing where they've all been role-playing it for so long, they've gotten really into it, and they, nobody wants to break the spell, and...
Yeah,
like, it's become too real at this point.
Yeah, like...
And it's,
like
and
the
the
Slenderman... the Slenderman whole mythos thing, where it gets that, and then you get some people on the edges who sincerely do believe that.
Yeah.
Isn't Slenderman based on a real myth, but because of various reasons, mostly because of the internet, it got stretched out of proportion that he doesn't resemble the original myth anymore?
No, he... okay, so they're... Alright, how do I put it? It's not based on an original myth, because we know where it came from. There have been... retro definite, you know what a backronym is?
I think so, yeah.
So an acronym is a thing where, okay, you just take the first letter of each word for a unit. And a backronym is where you start out with the word, usually because it's cool, and then come out with what words make it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it kind of did a backronym
awesome
history
ladies.
of Slenderman, connecting him post-fact to folkloric figures that kind of match.
Okay.
Well, where did you said you knew where he came from? So where did he come from originally?
It comes from the Something Awful forums, where it was a
was eventually turned into a video game.
Yeah, but they did like one of the fun things they did was creepy photoshopped contests, where it'd be take like a contest and it try to add it there, and somebody did like this Slenderman character into one that won it there, and yeah, that's the most popular one from that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that it was a photo contest.
Yeah, and then
I thought it was a creepypasta.
Yeah, no, the creepypastas came out from the photos. Because it's like, this, for some reason, this hit and made a big wave, and then the creepypastas came out to justify sharing the photos around.
Yep.
I see.
And then the video games, I guess, got made at that point, and it just sort of blew up from there because YouTube. So.
Right.
Yeah, and then before that, you had a bunch of people doing ARGs with it, like Marble Hornets and...
Sorry, what's an ARG? I'm not...
alternate reality game.
Okay.
Where,
all right.
Kind of the thing where it presents in some form a media that is the narrative, and that's presented in that this is a real thing that exists in this world. Like with the Slenderman ones, it will be the Marble Hornets is the most recognizable one, so it's that somebody noticed this figure in old videos, and then when they were doing video logs, it starts showing up in theirs as well, and they start recording it because they don't remember seeing this, but it's preserved in the video, and it goes on to this whole thing. And outside multimedia elements are brought in to encourage viewer participation. So that
that's
plot...
the kind of fun...
Yeah, so that, like, the plot in some ways will stall and not move forward until someone in the audience follows breadcrumbs and uncovers basically the next key that unlocks it.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that the internet always used to do that was fun.
Yeah.
Like where you just have a group of people on a forum or something gathering around and building up a whole mythos. The other one I remember people doing that for was when Community, the show Community, introduced Inspector Spacetime.
Oh.
The alternate version of Doctor Who that they created for Community, and some forums kind of and it was just a little background gag for the show, which actually got a little out of hand because fans got so obsessed with it.
Well, that's just fandom in general.
Yeah,
that just happens, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, it was fun. It was entertaining and everything. I wouldn't begrudge them anything. The big thing that happened with that was kind of a bit sad. Was that the actor they had on Community? When I say it got out of hand, I mean on the show more than on the forums.
Oh God!
Because they kept going back to that well a little too much, and he went to a Inspector Spacetime convention, and it was just kind of a throwaway joke, and they maybe milked it a little too hard. That's all. But the thing that was kind of funny about it was the guy who played the Inspector in that 2 or 3 clips that they did. Then went out and launched a Kickstarter to do a real Inspector Spacetime.
Oh my God.
On his own,
oh my God.
Thinking he could ride this to stardom, and he of course didn't have the rights to it or anything.
Of course not.
and NBC sort of, or whoever owned Community at that point, sort of came down on him and said, and that's kind of why they mercifully did away with Inspector Spacetime because of that.
Oh.
And it was a little bit sad. I felt a little sad for that guy, but that was not a smart move to just run off and try to claim that as your intellectual property and make that your big break.
No, I forget the guy who's behind Community, but it's
Dan Harmon.
Yeah, because even he's just kind of like. After a certain point, I remember he was just kind of like, I don't know why we're still on the air, but thanks. So it's not surprising that the guy didn't go to him and be like, hey, can we make this fake show a real thing? Question mark.
I don't know. That seems like it would be a neat thing to do if he'd actually thought about it.
Yeah, obviously. But considering that Community was kind of this weird, like, shot in the dark in a lot of ways, I can imagine why some people wouldn't have wanted to do that, but...
Well, I don't know. I mean, everyone... like, they could have done exactly what they did, run a Kickstarter and everything. They just should have made sure that, Harmon or NBC or whoever was on board before they did it, that's all. So that was the problem.
Yeah, I mean, asking first would have been smart, and just been like, hey... I wanna do this character and make a thing, even if it's like a bunch of YouTube shorts. That still would have been
which
fine.
is what he wanted to do, I think.
Okay,
was the idea.
Yeah.
But anyway,
also,
sorry.
Like for big ones there, when The Dark Knight was coming out, there was a Joker themed ARG. I remember.
Oh,
okay.
Involving that of like stuff written in character as Heath Ledger's Joker, providing a set of clues for people to follow that I think eventually led to a something that would reveal like the first preview of the first reveal of the Joker's look, I think.
Okay. This is before The Dark Knight came out?
Yeah, this was PR for The Dark Knight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. More recently, cartoonist and animator Alex Hirsch did one to celebrate the conclusion of Gravity Falls, encouraging people to look for clues throughout the western United States, to specifically for places from his childhood that influenced Gravity Falls, and event for the conclusion that it would eventually lead to the hidden body of the character Bill Cipher, which was an actual statue that was made and hidden in the woods, and completing the puzzles and finding the clues led you to the geocache location.
Yeah.
Wait, when you say his body, you mean like... Because he was the little demon pyramid guy, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
spoiler, he dies at the end, and all that remains is the petrified remains of his body.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't quite remember that, but okay. I'll take your word for it. That's a little macabre for a kid's show.
Yeah.
Contest.
Especially one that's on Disney Channel, but hey!
Yeah. Well, it was always a bit of a weirdo show.
Oh,
That was kind of a joke. It was a creepypasta for
went
kids,
into
kind of,
a fun snafu because apparently they thought it was okay, but some local police didn't agree so there were pictures reported of from Alex Hirsch saying, "Bad news, Bill has been arrested."
Oh, no!
And it's pictures of the police have basically, what do you call it, like, seized the statue and are holding it in evidence.
Oh my
police
god.
station.
Wow. Okay, I did not know about this.
How was it hurting anyone? Why would
I don't know. I guess because they weren't allowed to put up a statue there. And I think it generally was the feeling that it's not hurting anyone. It's in the middle of the woods, so...
Was it private property or
did.
public property that people weren't supposed to go on, or something to that effect?
It must have been.
It spooked out a white person, so they had to call the cops.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
But yeah, it was intended to be that it would just be the statue left in the woods for people to find to, build on the weird things that influence the series.
Yeah. Huh. That's kind of neat.
It's totally up Alex Hirsch's alley. He the entire show is based on that kind of premise, which is great.
Americana, X-Files kind of stuff.
And also just finding clues within the show, since every single episode has a cipher at the end of it that people have figured out in less than 5 minutes after the show airs. So yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, those...
Right, and those count as ARGs, too, because frequently they're messages written in the character of Bill.
Yep.
Talking directly to the audience.
Sometimes they're just random commentary, in terms of the show itself. And I think one of them was telling you what the next week's cipher is going to be also. So, that's, like I said, that's totally up Alex Hirsch's alley, and he just does that kind of stuff all the time, which is why I'm curious if he'll ever do another show ever again, but...
Yeah, I was going to say, what's he up to these days, Alex Hirsch? Is he doing anything?
Mostly it's just stuff regarding Gravity Falls? Like
the biggest
most
thing
recent
is the Gravity Falls comic, yeah.
Yeah, because Disney, in all of their intelligence and marketing skills, decided to make merchandise after the show has ended, rather than during the show is going on, while the show is going on.
It still has a pretty strong following, so they can probably sell it.
They had a strong following going like 5 episodes in. 5 episodes in, and there was already a fan podcast for the show.
Huh.
Like,
okay.
Yeah, cool. The Gravity Falls Gossiper, which is hilarious, and you should listen to it, if only I think it's like the 5th episode. They somehow got in contact with Alex Hirsch, who they interviewed as Grunkle Stan. So for no other reason, you go onto iTunes and listen to their podcast, listen to at least that episode, because it's a great episode.
Yeah, Alex Hirsch loves this shit. There was also one recently supposedly in character of Mabel releasing a video game of a Grunkle dating simulator in the vein of Dream Daddy.
Oh my god.
Dream Daddy, okay.
Do you know about Dream Daddy?
I know of it.
Okay. Yes. Oh my god. Well, I hope that game ends in Eldritch Horror.
Yeah. To which you could date one of her 2 elderly great uncles.
Oh my god.
That's right, she had 2.
She has 2, but yeah, again, I hope that game at least ends in the Eldritch Horror that was almost planned for Dream Daddy. So.
Well, now, if I remember, the Eldritch Horror one was planned to be like a Halloween Easter egg.
Oh, really? Okay.
That because people they uncovered it via data mining, right?
Yeah. It was data mined that they found it, because I believe if you were able to play through it, it tended to glitch out, or it didn't necessarily use the right images. And then it also introduced another character, who is also a single father, and presumably by introducing that new character, you can play through the game again, and instead date that new character if you want to. So... But obviously it was never released. And I think the team that made Dream Daddy is going to do another project because they've been posting. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So.
And I actually hadn't gotten far enough through the game to uncover anything like that, but supposedly there's elements of that in the Doki Doki Literature Club game.
Yes, and I have played through all of it. I think I've gotten all of the endings because I think I have all of the achievements for Doki Doki Literature Club, because you can do a whole bunch of weird shit with that game.
Yeah, I haven't gotten too far in playing with it, so far it just seems like a regular game with interesting mechanics.
For the most part, yeah, but if you do certain things before you even start up the game, like if you start with a new save file, like completely brand spanking new, and you delete certain characters, it causes certain things to trigger, and it's a little disturbing, and people really shouldn't play Doki Doki Literature Club if they're a little sensitive. And I do mean that seriously, like, if you're sensitive to certain topics, Doki Doki Literature Club really isn't a game that you should play. Yeah.
Which is still weird because I've managed to avoid anything relating spoilers or that somehow.
Really?
Yeah, and have not come to anything that hints it's going in any direction like that, so let's see what's going on.
How far are you into it? I have to ask.
Not far at all. I haven't gotten far at all.
Okay, because it does take a while to get to that stuff, but you should pay attention to all of the dialogue that the girls are giving you, because all of their dialogue hints at various neuroses.
I don't get video games, you guys. I do not understand video games.
These are visual novels, so they're not even the most complex of video games.
These are the most accessible of video games.
Yeah. Because it's all based on text and dialogue maps, basically. So, but yeah, Yeah, no, I've completed Doki Doki Literature Club, and it is a good game, but it gets kind of intense towards the end because reasons, and I don't want to spoil it for Ing, so I won't say anything more. I should probably check if the sequel has come out yet or not, but yeah, it's a good game. In any case, where were we talking about again?
We were talking about ARGs, and we were also talking about, if you want to go way back, we were talking about QAnon.
Well, right, QAnon.
Which the gist of it is that, like, the fun things that, like, those ARGs make for people is what I think fuels the QAnon, that it's just the fascist version of that. Especially reading into the logo that they refer to the hints as breadcrumbs, which is logo also shared with ARGs.
Right.
Like, a breadcrumb is...
Well,
a breadcrumb is the things that, lead the viewer to the next part of it.
Right.
Yeah. No, the guy who's running, whoever the Q guy is, he's very clearly just some guy chuckling at himself, getting everyone all wrought up and doing crazy clues to get everyone running around. So, I mean, this sounds even closer than I'd at first imagined based on your description of it.
Yeah.
Just that this guy,
No,
this guy's
fits.
clearly
Okay, so going back to the Slenderman ones, one of the ones, Everyman Hybrid, where, geez, this is probably the worst radio show ever, but
are you kidding?
The premise of one is that
QAnon is Slenderman. We've cracked it wide open.
Yeah, the basic premise of it is it's a YouTube channel that was supposed to be a how to do fitness gym free, but it quickly descends into a Twin Peaks-like story when Slenderman shows up and stuff. And there's a character kind of equivalent to Evil Bob from Twin Peaks, in that it is a force that possesses people, and a big thing in that story is that that character called Habit challenged a bunch of the viewers to a series of contests, and that which viewers actually had to participate in in order to find, like, a geocache, and the YouTube page would not update until somebody actually found it, and thus moved the story forward.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
And that does
so just imagine that, only rather than find this is like the reward for it is finding a geocache and being integrated into the videos as a minor character, and instead it's things like telling you, go take a gun to a pizza place.
Right.
Oh, jeez.
Or they think it is.
Yeah.
And then,
as they'd
I
want
think I mentioned
us to
last
believe.
time, every so often with the QAnon, you'll get someone who goes, and also Lucifer is sending his angelic choirs in Morse code to tell me to like they inject, like, religion into it, and then everyone else gets really quiet. Like, it's like that's where you're obviously getting the people who really do believe this, and they really are into this in a way that that the cosplayers and the funny thing about a lot of the QAnon people, you'll see them start to argue, and some of them will say, is he a LARP? Like, i.e., is he just someone who's playing a game with us all?
Yeah.
And some of them will just flat out say, I think he's a LARP, but he's uncovering so much interesting information that is so relevant and he's waking people up to how great Trump is and stuff like that. And it's like, so you're admitting that he's just lying and making stuff up, but you still think he's useful as a source of information for all those unenlightened normies, I guess. Like, it's the logic.
But that's the thing. Oh, it's like, what? Yeah, once you lie, people can see how great Trump is.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that becomes nakedly the there was a brief time where I thought, hey, well, maybe if you talk to these guys and go, hey, there is a lot of awful government stuff going on right now, and Trump is part of it, because I thought they were just so anti-government they'd follow that route. But no, they don't. They don't care. They just want an excuse to excuse everything Trump is doing, basically. That's all they do. It's got nothing to do with any outside force. It's just being Trump worshippers, basically.
Yeah.
Like I said before, Trump actually is connected to actual pedophile conspiracies.
Yeah. Everything, literally everything that they hate.
And they're not interested in that.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, even the whole Russian conspiracy thing, he's admitted to collusion. He has said so himself. And yet
he's doing that to throw everyone off his track. Like, there's no explanation, no matter how obvious it is, there's no explanation that will do for these people that isn't just part of a fifth-dimensional chess game that Trump is playing, basically.
Right. Which is why he's also trying to justify that collusion is not a crime. Okay!
It's funny. A few months ago, I did see some people turning on Trump, and it was when I can't remember what it was. He did something that was, like, sort of good. It would not really, because he was just throwing it out there, and then moving on to the next thing. But it was something to do with, like, not prosecuting immigrants. And at that point, they all shrieked and threw their hands up and said, oh, Trump's been corrupted by the swamp. Oh, he's into... Like, the one time he does something that wasn't 100% awful, that's when they gave up on him. And a bunch of them said, oh, Trump's not... Oh, he's not... He's part of it, too. Then he's into it. That's what it took to turn Trump on them.
Gosh.
So it really is just... they're all the... It's an excuse for all the bad stuff that they love.
I mean, saying it's fascist Slenderman is the cute, hippie way. Probably a better historical thing is the Protocols of Zion.
Oh, yeah. Well, for sure. Didn't those... And those originated...
the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Yeah, Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
It was, if I
remember... Those originated with the Russian Tsar, right? Wasn't it? It was their way of kind of being anti... to stomp out the subversive elements in their society, including communists, I believe.
Right, it was to frame the growing communist support as in part of the evil Jewish conspiracy, and that was used as evidence by the Nazis and everyone years later for how... why they'd need to bring a solution to the Jewish problem, heavy air quotes.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it really. You're right. It's probably, you could probably straight up trace the descent, through the Birchers and through all the various conspiracy theories. But, anti-Semitic and anti-xenophobic and all those guys. Because it really is essentially the same intellectual, if you want to call it that, tradition that was obsessed with, anti-Semitic conspiracies. Of course, they all think George Soros is the great mastermind behind everything, for some reason. A guy I had literally never heard of until I started hearing all these conservatives scream about him, and how he's... My favorite is they believe that every time there's a rally against Trump, it's all people being paid by Soros.
Fucking wish.
Yeah, 800 million people come out to protest Trump, and they're like, oh, yeah, that was all Soros. It's like, how much money do you think this guy has that he can pay all these people independently to come to these huge rallies? He's rich, but he's not that rich.
No one is that rich.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And they would excuse it. So I actually got one guy linked to... I was like, yeah, really? You think Soros is really, like, what, putting ads in the paper? He's like, yes, he is! And he linked to an article, and it was like a Breitbart article. And the hilarious thing, it was an article saying, who wants to come to... It was like for the Women's March or whatever. Who wants to come to a booth and sell merchandise? That's straight up what it was. We need some people to come to the march and sell merchandise. That was their evidence.
Yeah, that's not the same thing.
Well, I know that. And the thing is, it was framed in... It wasn't even Breitbart. It was like some real fringy site. And they put that... That was their one, pearl of evidence. and they built this elaborate clam around it of just this whole elaborate theory with no other basis for it. And then that was the article. Like, it produced this one screenshot of a Craigslist ad or whatever, looking for some people to man and like it was slightly vague, so you could, if you really worked at it, you could misinterpret it that way as, oh yeah, we want to hire people to come down. Like, we need to hire people to come down and but it was clearly talking about manning a merchandise booth too. So I mean, they just had to really, they had to do backflips through logic holes to make it sound even remotely sinister. But just the idea that this is, they're hiring tens of millions of people, and somehow it's a secret conspiracy.
And no one talks.
It's kind of funny.
Right, and no one talks, which is the big thing for any conspiracy, because the success of a conspiracy, the probability of a conspiracy's success is inverse to how many people have to be directly involved.
Exactly. But that's not how it works with these guys.
No.
It basically, almost at a certain point, becomes everyone is in on this except us, but we're also the people who secretly understand that it's going on. And they never quite connect the two logically. Anyway. So, we'll like everyone else, I'm interested to see what happens now. Like, literally, the internet's been abuzz on this the last couple days in a way that it wasn't before.
I think it's because I guess whoever wrote it up are making more people aware of it. Because a lot of what I've seen is definitely people who are newly aware of QAnon.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the QAnon people themselves,
they really do go stupid even using the term QAnon like this. Can we at least agree to say it in a funny voice?
Qanon.
It's like even saying, giving it like
Qanon,
Qanon.
Like, we at least all, like, give a voice that agrees that it's the SpongeBob making a chicken mocking voice.
QAnon.
Quanon. We're gonna call it Quanon.
There we go. It's quinine. Let's go with that. The precursor to aspirin. Quinine.
Yes. Which is healthy if you're a Victorian, I guess? I don't know.
I'm going to assume it killed people because everything killed people.
Well, actually, I think it was one of the more... If you had to have an old-timey remedy, I think...
It's one of the better ones.
Actually one of the better ones.
Oh, yeah, it's literally just tonic water.
Oh, really?
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Well, so at least it won't hurt you, right?
Tonic water is where you kind of find it. It's from the same source, yeah.
Right. So
I think quinine was more concentrated, but no, it actually is mostly harmless.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then, like I say, the opium, because that would actually work, but for complete other reasons, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, it is funny that you'll see these guys going, the quinine people going, oh, this is great. The message is getting out. Now people will educate themselves and be red pilled. So occasionally they'll give the game away and say red pilled.
Oh my god!
Because they're MRA people, But sometimes they aren't. But they honestly seem to think that it's good if their message gets out. Like, they honestly think it is. You don't hear them going, oh, they're propagandizing it. Oh, they're gonna turn everyone against us. No, they're straight up going, oh, it's good if it gets out. People will believe us. Which
also get the one that kills me. It's like, you believe this great conspiracy with, like, fucking subterranean mole man tunnels transferring preteen child slaves and everything, and, like, basically just short of having the teleporter pods from They Live and all that, but you don't believe that the media will, like, twist this against you. It
will be a faithful representation.
Yeah, there's such a disconnect between what they think the conspiracy is capable of and why, for some reason, it is completely incapable of other things.
Oh, yeah. That's the classic, yeah.
And it should be noted, I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but it was true initially a few years ago, but even the Brony fandom knew to not go on any reality TV show because it would not actually display who they were effectively. Now, granted, this was before shit really hit the fan with bronies, but even still, even the My Little Pony community recognized that they should not be going on things like that one obsession-based reality TV show. That
My Strange Addiction.
Yes, that one, which had people who loved eating mattresses and shit like that. They knew not to get themselves on that TV show no matter what. When even Brony fandom is far smarter than you, you know there's something wrong.
Yeah, they have the self-awareness.
There says I've been outwitted by Cloppity Clop.
Don't say that. No, don't say that. Do you know what Clop is?
I have a vague idea, which is why I specifically.
Oh God!
Let's not elaborate on that.
No, okay. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah, yes. I think we get the general idea. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let's see right?
Okay. Yeah. Let's get some another clickbait going on here. Something more specific. Do you have anything
okay, so
for us
I have
today?
several things. One is not really a clickbait, but it's possibly could talk about it, especially since it involves animation. So we might all be interested in that. The other one is one that I feel kind of is worth talking about, but also it was such a flash in the pan that it's already old news.
What's that?
Well, let's put it this way. I actually don't have a link to it because it just no longer exists.
Okay, well that's a pretty good sign that
and it was
don't need to talk about
Forbes article on what even are library anyway?
Yeah.
Oh,
that.
The library guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's. Yeah, I can dig up the link. That's fine. We all read
No. I have the
anyway,
link for it. It's not there because Forbes has taken it down because it
Forbes
got
took
so
it
much
down
heat.
in within 24 hours of it blowing up.
I have the link up and it's a 404.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting because the guy, it was a pretty blatant case of social engineering. Let's get people thinking about how libraries are sucking their precious tax dollars, and it'll get people thinking about, just as they do with everything else. Oh, you're right, libraries are taking all my tax money. They're trying to push an agenda, clearly. Mm-hmm. And there was a whole thing where the guy said, oh yeah, he was being paid, or rather he was paying to write that in Forbes. Somebody was clearly paying to plant this in Forbes.
Well,
and he came out
clarify,
and said, oh, no.
It was through a system where you pay to get your piece published.
Oh.
So he actually paid far more than what it cost him in taxes to support a library.
Yeah.
Talk about poor have books?
Yeah.
Should poor have book?
Yeah, well, again, the larger agenda. But it was a little bit more complex because it did turn out that he's on the board at Forbes or whatever, so he didn't just walk in off the street and say, hey, here's a big
No, he's the head of an economics department.
Yeah, that part I knew that he was head of an economics department, which, makes that whole situation worse. But the fact that he's also on the board for Forbes makes it even more worse than it already was.
But,
well, I mean,
but
Forbes
guys, it is a fallacy to look at the source of the argument and not actually argue, the guy's very good point, which was, poors have book?
Book?
Question mark?
Why?
Yeah.
Book have poors?
Yeah.
Why pay taxes for books? Just buy books.
Reading agitates the gallbladder of the poors, who could be used, but whose meat is otherwise succulent and tender, and book learning merely dulls their senses or excites their senses and makes their meat stringy and Anyway, just the fact that was... It's interesting, though, that they did take it down, because it was almost like this is shedding too much light on what we do here.
Oh, Jesus,
I feel like that's the reason they took it down. Yeah.
Yeah, but pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that, and they said, did they ever give an actual rationale for why it was taken down? Did they say, we took it down because
he was commenting outside his expertise.
Right.
So effectively, because he was so full of shit and got called on it by everyone.
Yeah. Which obviously they don't care about per se, but there had to be, a level where, this isn't doing what we wanted it to do, basically.
Probably, although, it clearly did work in theory. They were getting clicks, and usually clicks means money.
Well, that's the interesting part, because they're getting clicks, but on the other hand, everyone's laughing at... They really did want to push this theory. So the two capitalist tendencies are battling each other, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
And basically, they're just left shaking their fists, see what happened when poors have book?
Try again in 20 years, when poors no more have book.
Yes. Yeah, that's because, in all likelihood, the entire world will just collapse and nobody will have libraries.
Yes. Well, I'm an optimist. I don't believe that will happen, but I know I'm probably dumb for thinking that. But it is very heartening to see everyone just come roaring to the defense of libraries. And literally, I don't think anyone who wasn't a paid professional right-wing troll was even the ones who are right-wing but have some modicum of, I don't know, decorum or sense, were just, at least they knew to stay out of it and not jump in on it, There's people who make a living again trolling and getting clickbait. I'm sure, Dinesh D'Souza or somebody came in and said, yes, she's right, poor not have book is good. But, or Ben Shapiro or one of those guys. But the people who actually like to be taken semi-seriously, they didn't bother. Even if they're yes, taxes are bad if they pay for, your child's insulin. Yes,
finally, poor's no book.
Yeah, they knew that was, as they say, who is it who always says on Twitter, he says the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet, usually talking about Trump. Just that they give the game away, and I think that was an article that gave the game away a little bit too much. For we want to get rid of libraries, but we don't want people. Where it was too soon to have people out there talking about how libraries all needed to be destroyed. So that's if we're speaking of conspiracy theories. But I mean, it's hard not to conclude that that's what happened.
I mean, it's not really a theory because it was out enough in the open that people were easily able to. Just take a stick and poke the leaves away and see that, this seemingly person, what looked like to be a person, just, crouched behind a bush talking, was just, just the head and torso, and was a bunch of wire works and everything leading up to, basically Mr. Burns behind at a shed.
Yeah. Mr. Snrub with a false mustache. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty... That was, again, that was a, yeah. They exposed themselves a little too much, I think, on that
Speaking of exposing themselves, I'm going to transfer this to the other one, which I sent a link to, because this is the other closest to
Yes, I just saw that.
So we go from poors have books to Bigfoot has dick?
Bigfoot has junk? Yes. Well, as you may know, Ing, explain in case there's someone somewhere who has not heard the context of Bigfoot this week. Maybe you'd like to explain it for us. Yeah.
Leslie, and I have to specify, I'm not making any of this up. Leslie Cockburn is running against the Republican candidate Denver Wriggleman.
Denver Wriggleman. Which already makes this ridiculous, but okay.
Who previously had been on camera campaigning with the white supremacist, and Leslie Cockburn released in a tweet that he is, according seemingly from his Instagram account, a devotee of Bigfoot erotica.
This is not what we need on Capitol Hill.
Not what we need on Capitol Hill. Just the most
Yes.
That's the biggest understatement of the world. Like, it's kind of like, Nazi Bigfoot fetishes, that's okay on their own time, but on that Capitol Hill, we should definitely not have that. Like, it's almost implying there's a context in which this is fine, really.
Look,
but that's not what we need on Capitol Hill.
We can have fear of Bigfoot, but not on Capitol Hill.
Well, I mean,
so considering one of the most... I have...
Go ahead. You're fine.
No, you go ahead. I was gonna...
You can go ahead.
So, one thing that I have to bring up is that, yes, Bigfoot erotica is a real thing, and I think possibly the most infamous installment of it is a movie called The Geek.
Okay.
Where,
interesting.
Let me just say that the premise of it's the premise of people are camping, Bigfoot has their way with them, and then why it got popular on the internet is because the ending of it is one of the people basically shaking their fist and saying, someday somebody's gonna get that filthy animal, and then it ends. Just abruptly but where it's like the thing at the beat there, it's like, that's odd it's like, imagine like an episode of Supernatural or The X-Files where the monster comes up, messes with people initially, and people say that monster's a jerk, and then walk away, and you don't have the rest of the episode dealing with getting rid of the monster. Like, these people literally, they or their friends have been raped by a Sasquatch, and their response is, that sucks, but it's somebody else's problem.
Oh, God.
God. This is okay. I was not aware of this.
Neither was I.
That's actually closer to some X-Files episodes than maybe you think. But anyway.
I mean, yeah, but not the good ones.
No, not the good ones. There was one where there was an ongoing joke about Mulder being sexually attracted to Sasquatches on the X-Files.
Oh,
well,
gosh.
In one of the early episodes, they encounter what they think is a Sasquatch-like beast, and it turns out to be like a cave woman who's been living in the woods, and Mulder's like, she was beautiful, Scully. And then they turn that into literal, like, that was obviously a really dumb bit. So they turn it into a running joke. Like,
and
later
then
you
Scully
see...
looks at the camera and says, somebody's gonna have to get that filthy animal.
And Scully's like, what does this say about me that we have such chemistry? Anyway.
Oh, jeez.
But they literally did a joke in one of the more comedic episodes where he was sitting in bed watching the Bigfoot video, and they like kind of implied he was masturbating to the Bigfoot video.
Oh my God.
I'm not even joking.
I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from such classic episodes of In Search Of.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. So apparently this is a proud quote question mark tradition. But anyway, so
it's not exactly out there that people have been finding movie monsters, although Bigfoot's technically not a movie monster, to be attractive. So that's not exactly out of the question. It's just, this is a weird kink-shaming thing that happened. And it mostly happened because they were Nazis.
Let's be clear. We talked about this online. I want to be clear. People were saying, well, don't kink shame. It's like, well, you know what? I'm not actually kink shaming. It's the fact that he's a Nazi that puts this in such a weird perspective. Because everyone has their weird thing, and I'm 100% live and let live, whatever. It's totally different when you're a regular person online and you have a sense of humor and you're a good guy. When you're a Nazi running for Congress, and this comes out, that puts a whole other. It's a more benign thing. It was the guy? It was like a year or two ago. There was a congressman who. Apparently he went broke paying for, like, loot boxes in World of Warcraft or something. I can't remember. It was something to do with him having a World of Warcraft addiction, and he was a congressman. And it's like, if you love to play World of Warcraft, nobody's going to blink twice. But him being a congressional candidate, for some reason, and of course he was a Republican, made it, like... funny and weird and sad in a way that
even that I feel is less funny than this, because that's an actual gambling addiction problem.
Yeah. Like that's actual
This
addiction.
one is funny because yes, the bad part of this is the Nazi, but
yes,
it gets into the tickle the funny bone aspect of like Ninja Rowboat Pirate. That Nazi on its own, Nazi congressional candidate, not that funny. Nazi Bigfoot erotica aficionado.
Yeah.
Congressional candidate has the proper amount of up and down whiplash to make it funny.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny and makes this guy just seem like a complete sad sack. Again, and I mean, I know
Please
people in
avoid the
Congress
term of
are
using
humans,
sack
and they
in this conversation.
I'm sorry, what?
Phrasing for sack in this conversation.
Sack squash. Sad sack Sasquatch. Sad
And
sack
also,
Sasquatch. Say that 10 times fast.
I would be remiss
Anyway.
if I didn't point out that Chuck Tingle got popularity by writing headlines that actually directly tie into this. For example, one of his early ones was "Bigfoot Pirates Haunt My Balls."
Someday I've got to read one of those Chuck Tingle books, which aren't really books, right? They're like short stories.
They're novellas,
right? They're not,
yeah.
He doesn't actually write an entire novel every week based on current events, right?
I mean, from his output, he actually kind of probably does the equivalent, because he writes a lot of these.
Jeez.
Such as a follow-up or spiritual successor, Seduced by Dr. Bigfoot, Attorney at Law. Or the more topical one, Fake News, Real Boners.
Oh. Well, see, yeah. That almost sounds like sophisticated enough that it kind of almost ruins the joke, because the joke was supposed to be that he was weirdly obsessed with, like, it was always, no matter what happened, it was pounded in the butt by, like, Bitcoin or whatever, or pounded in the butt
the
by
Space Raptor butt invasion, yes.
Yes, Space Raptor. And then he got a Hugo nomination, and he was pounded in the butt by my Hugo nomination.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and I can confirm from these covers that more recent ones label it from Hugo-nominated author Chuck Tingle.
Oh my god.
Yep. Well, what's great about that, and it ties in, I don't, if people don't know the story about Chuck Tingle, he was, there was as well as Gamergate, there was this weird little controversy a few years ago about called the Sad Puppies, where a bunch of basically the same kind of people, the alt-right shirkwads, they decided to game the Hugo Awards, which you can do if you know the rules, into nominating books they wanted. So on every list, you'd get one book that was like really hardcore alt-right, military sci-fi.
Largely from a guy called, what was it, Vox Day?
Oh, Vox Day, yeah, exactly.
Who's
a very
conservative failed sci-fi writer because his stuff is genuinely not good. And not even to the point of being like so bad it's good. It is so just non-things there that they're not even worth commenting on. But, his lack of success are the liberals in the sci-fi community keeping him down.
SJWs. And which, isn't he the one who wrote a book called SJWs Always Lie? And he's 100%, he's not just very conservative, he is an alt-right white supremacist. He has some of his fingerprints.
He is a neo-feudalist.
Yeah, he's, and this is one of these things where he's probably, doing it tongue-in-cheek, but, again, he has the dangerous people listening to him, basically. And he definitely encourages neo-Nazi stuff. And he has some of his fingerprints on Comicsgate, the more recent thing, as well. People have pointed out, Ethan Van Scriver, a comics artist, he's been making a big thing out of running he went full Nazi a while ago. He started putting Nazi regalia on his sketchbooks and stuff, and going, why are you getting offended by my neo-Nazi regalia? He got fired from DC for being a Nazi. Did the Aggrieved Act, and then he launched a Kickstarter for a book, which got a huge amount of supporters. But this is one of those occasions where you see that, and it's like, it's pretty clear that he's got some rich sugar daddy giving him the money via Kickstarter to make it look like, he's got all these supporters, and it's actually just a rich guy, probably Vox Day, giving his money, possibly distributing it between a few different people so that it doesn't look as suspicious.
Because it does list how many people actually support, so...
Yeah, even with multiple people, it was a suspiciously low amount of people giving a lot of money.
Right.
So it sounds like it's as likely he basically got a job from the usual suspects who fund this kind of stuff. Because there are some...
And it's think tank funded.
Yeah.
Because there's for some reason an unlimited number of people who have enough money and really don't want to pay for libraries, but will waste money on this stupid shit.
Yep. Well, yeah, no, it's Vox Day, this guy, he is very rich, from what I understand. His parents got rich doing something or another, and also Richard Spencer, the famous punched Nazi who we've seen punched a million times in that GIF. He's quite well off too. He's quite wealthy apparently. He's literally, I think his family got money from tobacco farming, I think. Which may explain why there's such white supremacists. Anyway, there's a few of these guys who actually have a lot of money and have been funding this kind of stuff. So anyway, these guys. Anyway, going back to the sad puppies. So this guy was kind of the mastermind of this whole thing, and to try to get these things on the Hugo ballot. And one of the things they got was Space Raptor Bud Invasion by Chuck Tingle, which was supposed to it was supposed to show, look at how ridiculous the Hugos have become. They're so stupid. They keep nominating, people of color and women, and not like the good old days where it was all white guys in spacesuits. Apparently, even though it wasn't, you can go back decades and they were at least nominating diverse people. But
except for the futurist strain, which was like the very Nazi strain of sci-fi, which my wonderful spouse actually has written a paper on, and I'm so proud of it.
I mean, it goes back and forth with sci-fi. You kind of got.
Yeah, your paper, I would argue. Sex bomb. Yeah.
Hello, nice lady.
Did your wife wander in at another strange point in your podcast?
Yeah, she's in there, and she just said, "What?" It's like
it's always the most. It's always the weirdest, most embarrassing points in the podcast where the context is required. But anyway, they put this up there to sort of and it was their example of we're going to make the Hugos look ridiculous, and Chuck Tingle, the guy who got the nomination. Whoever he is, of course it's a pseudonym and nobody really knows who he really is, but he ended up turning out to be very much against these the sad puppies and the alt-right people, and he started devoting, he literally, I think one of the first things he did was he redirected the website they all told you to link to one that was about donating to social justice causes, and he actually became a sensation at doing it in his weird character voice, but still arguing against the kind of things that the alt-right hated, because they had been arguing the whole time, he's one of us, he's doing a parody of an SJW. But then he kept it up for years, and it was pretty clear that he was on. He's doing it very weirdly and tongue-in-cheekly, but he's apparently done everything he can to sort of support good causes and raise money for causes that help people.
It is actually clear. The closest thing for who Chuck Tingle is that it is clear that it is indeed a gay man.
Yeah, well, it's also been somebody posited that it was. I believe you occasionally hear from his son, or supposedly his son, who sort of breaks the character to say, my dad is writing these. He says he's also autistic, and that's part of it. And I mean, which is probably true, but he's also doing it. I mean, there's still a humorous character persona that he's adopted and everything like that. So there was a few years ago, there was a big, who is Chuck Tingle? There was a big mystery around it. People trying to figure out who it was. There was even an article that wrote about it that where they kind of said, "Oh, are we exploiting this guy? Are we taking advantage of this guy if he's autistic?" And I had an autistic friend who wrote about it. He said, "What are you talking about? He's a humorist. He knows what he's doing. He's not. It's clearly, he's clearly doing it with some awareness of what's going on, and he believes he's helping, and that's all there is to it, basically." So, but it was an interesting. He's just become a staple of humor on the web based on that. But yeah, he was adopted briefly by the alt. He's one of a few people who were adopted by the alt-right without bothering to check if he agreed with them, and he did not.
And may I jump to the punchline of the Hugo nomination?
Yes, please.
Where, as the final punchline and middle finger to them, is that Chuck Tingle revealed that he would not be revealing his true identity, and if that he won, he would have the most irrationally hated figure by the alt-right, Zoe Quinn, accept the prize on his behalf.
Yes, that's right.
And then they established a rapport, and then they crowdfunded an actual Chuck Tingle dating simulator, which I'm excited to come out. Which led to the ironic thing that it was like, for all the obsession over who is Chuck Tingle with these people, if that was a thing they just introduced, well, congratulations, the one person who may actually know is Zoe Quinn, who is not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Nice.
So here we are.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Did that ever come out? Is it still being
I don't think it's come out. I've gotten updates on it, though.
Oh, okay.
I have to check.
Yeah. That's right. It was pretty squarely a fuck you to the alt-right people. He was definitely not. He was definitely not supporting them in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, let's go back to the Nazi who likes Bigfoot. Boy, we live in a strange world these days, don't we?
You might like Bigfoot a little bit too much.
Yes. So this article is talking about. What do we know about Bigfoot's genitals?
What do we know about Bigfoot, and what can we infer about Bigfoot's genitals as a result? And whether or not, and then it gets into whether or not does Bigfoot have to be a man? Why isn't Bigfoot a woman?
I mean, logically, there would have to be both men and women Bigfoot if it was not a single mutant creature of some kind, and in fact, a species that had been around for many thousands of years.
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically. If we're going to talk about vaguely plausible Bigfoot theories, the fact is that about, I can't remember, a couple million years ago, there were 3 species of, Ing probably knows this better than I do with his biology knowledge, but there were 3 species of Australopithecines, and the one that was our direct ancestor coexisted with one that was quite a bit smaller and one that was quite a bit bigger and was a vegetarian, probably. And the theory is that hominid might have somehow hung on in some of the remote corners of the world, and that would be the Bigfoot, or his descendants would be Bigfoot. Here, I'm just going to look it up.
Yes,
it's right here with the name.
Also, a bit of evolutionary history that Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter in their Long Earth series tapped into to give the because it deals with parallel worlds, and basically only one world has humans proper, but there are a lot of different timelines where there were effectively cousin hominids developed, and species that basically are and are highly hinted to be what Bigfoot sightings are called trolls are a big part of the story.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
That's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have the first book of The Long Earth, and I haven't read it yet. I've been meaning to. Maybe I'll just get the audiobook.
that's barely a spoiler.
I'm sure.
Well, it makes sense if it's parallel reality. That's always one of the things people talk about. What if the Neanderthals had taken over instead of us?
Yeah.
But by the way, the one I'm talking about is Australopithecus robustus, according to this book. That was about the same time as Homo habilis, which is our ancestor. And there was, anyway, with the theory that they survived. But yeah, there were a number of different hominids. So I mean, as crackpot theories go, it's, vaguely plausible that there might be some, there's a name for it, right? If like an ancient species that ended up surviving, like a coelacanth or something that ended up surviving to the present day.
Yeah, there's a term, but just the more conventional one of just a living fossil.
Living fossil, yeah. Well, I mean, there's some fancy Latin word for it or something, but which I always like, the Latin.
Yeah, but I'm not even going to risk trying to butcher it, and I can't remember it right now.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. But, it's the species that they thought were extinct and turn out to still exist. Like, the most obvious one being the coelacanth.
Right.
Which is the ancient fish that they found, within the last few decades. They suddenly discovered
family of tetrapod fish.
Yeah, it was like in the deep sea or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few like that. Yeah, exactly.
But
I always liked
where it comes up that, like, the biggest problem for could there be Bigfoots, big feet?
Yeah.
Okay, how do we do the plural of Bigfoot?
Bigfoots?
Big feet. Well, how about to say Sasquatches?
Big feet, or do we do like a goose-geese thing and it's Big Foos?
Big Foos?
Bigfoots.
I mean, considering that people believe that they're related to the Yeti, which is a different culture's version of the Sasquatch myth, I think that's just pluralized as Yetis. So I don't know. Yeah. Unless it is Yeti, like fish, where fish can be the plural of fish.
Well, let's not forget that the Bigfoot and the Sasquatch are supposedly in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
Whereas the Yeti and the Abominable Snowman are supposedly in Tibet.
Right.
So those are two different things, except, again, maybe it's the same species and they happen to live in a few different places in the world.
Except it's also very weird, because if you go back to the early, like, Tibet depictions of the Yeti, it's kind of very... Well, for one, their stories of Yetis frequently have them small, not large, and it's also very clear from the illustrations that it is like a stylized snow leopard, or inspired by the snow leopard.
Interesting.
Oh, okay.
Because if I remember from the art correctly, it has kind of like a cat-like... It's drawn with like a cat-like head and leopard spots. So I'm not quite sure. There might be like a second Yeti story that became that one, or it might just be a really weird Anglo-bastardization of it.
Okay, well that would make a certain amount of sense too.
Yeah.
Because, and I mean, even in just Tibetan mythology, there's kind of demon, a hairy demon type of monster could have been seen by some Western guy on a wall somewhere and gone, "Oh, that must be the monster they saw." You know what I mean? Like there's a few critters like that in Tibetan mythology that could fit that profile. But yeah, I mean, as we say, it's all cryptid stuff. So this guy is actually doing the research on Bigfoot's
It's actually a
genitals
good article on what would Bigfoot's genitals be like if there were Bigfoot.
Well, it seems like it's a zoological podcast.
Yeah. To be fair, this came out because it just went through my Tumblr thing, so this isn't technically clickbait, but it's related to a clickbaity thing.
It's very much related to a clickbaity thing, yeah.
Okay, hold on.
I mean, they seem to know what they're talking about, if nothing else.
I found the picture of the Tibetan depiction of the Yeti I was thinking of and sharing it.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
That's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, it's very different than the Western one there.
A little bit, yeah.
It looks like a baboon almost, but with tiger stripes.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, it's got human hands and human feet. That would be the main. Otherwise, you could see it as a tiger, but yeah, the human hands and the human feet, and vaguely human shape. But then, of course, it could just be a,
the face is more cat-like than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I mean,
you see it kind of like falls into more of just the general like mythology one of like animal or chimeric spirits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's. I mean, if I saw that in the margins of a medieval book or something, I'd say, hey, look, some monk is making shit up. Not that it was a real thing he'd ever seen. They could always have fun with stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of hallucinogenic mold.
Well,
not much to...
That's how unicorns basically came about, because they didn't know, they couldn't take a picture of a white rhinoceros,
right?
So they had to describe it, and the closest thing to the description was a horse.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's always like the hippopotamus became that literally means river horse.
Yep.
In Latin or Greek, actually, I think it's a mix of Latin and Greek. But I mean, that's how they interpreted it, as a horse, basically. A horse of the river, so that gives you a clue about what they were thinking in terms of a rhinoceros.
Oh! I'm actually reading up on the Tibetan things for the Yetis there, and it actually uncovered a new Discworld pun for me.
Oh, really?
Okay.
What's that?
So, apparently in Sherpa, Yeti is a word that's derived from Ya, meaning rock, and Ta, meaning animal, so the Yeti is the rock animal, or living rock animal, and...
Oh my god!
Yeah, in Discworld, Terry Pratchett made the Yeti a relative and species of trolls, which are silicon-based life forms.
Yep.
Right.
So that's the real...
God.
And it seems odd at first, why would you lump in Yetis with trolls, which are... He kind of depicts as like the rock biter from Neverending Story.
Right.
Yep.
And now we have the reason for it because of this linguistic pun.
Oh my god.
I think we've covered... Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say about this article, Bigfoot Erotica? I mean, they really have
I think
gone
so.
into detail about their scientific theories about Bigfoot genitals and what they would be like.
Mostly I wanted to talk, is it proper to kink-shame Nazis over their Bigfoot eroticism?
And we've decided yes. We had that discussion. Is it proper to kink-shame Nazis? Yes. We're not...
Yeah, Yes, it's perfectly fine to kink-shame Nazis because
we're not
they're
even
Nazis.
really kink-shaming them. It's just kind of funny that he's that and he's running for Congress anyway.
Yeah.
And that he's a Nazi. Anyway,
this feels like a Hellboy story.
Does it?
You could see this in a Hellboy story of Nazis seeking Bigfoot, and rather than it being like some elaborate Nazi plan like it always is, it is because he is simply, like, erotically attracted to Bigfoot.
Well, that's
no.
what happened, isn't it?
Yeah.
My Discord just died.
He wants to
this
raise...
is not good.
I don't know. Has Hellboy ever... I've only read the early Hellboy, so I don't know if he ever faces Bigfoot. I feel like he deals more with literally mythological creatures as opposed to paranormal stuff.
Yeah, the mythological supernatural creatures that Nazis are his big thing. Yeah,
definitely Nazis. The Nazi bit I do not question as being a connection to Hellboy, but it's the Bigfoot part I don't know about. But anyway. So do we have any Waluigi for this section, for this edition?
I mean, the kind of disappointing joke would just to be say no. The sort of answer is there's nothing interesting, just that Waluigi, along with Bowser Jr., is one of the characters to get a nerf and an update to Mario Tennis, which isn't funny or really interesting, so I don't have anything to go on.
So we don't have any new Waluigi. Okay,
no.
Fair enough. Waluigi segment is on its is at an ebb this week.
Yeah, unfortunately this time around, nothing this week. Who knows?
All right, I'll have to comb the internet for Waluigi for next week, or maybe we'll get lucky like we did the other week, where there just turned out to be some Waluigi news. Anyway.
Yeah, but no, the running segment we started as a joke was not able to run.
Uh-huh. Yes. Fair enough. But anyway, so we've covered this guy with the Bigfoot genital article. I just can't believe how in-depth he gets.
Well, Arcane. I believe that's kind of a thing with Bigfoot people in general, is that they try to find zoological reasons for the existence of Bigfoot. So, yeah. And, the reverse is true as well. People try to find zoological reasons as to why Bigfoot couldn't possibly exist. And in my case, it's just kind of like somebody saw something, and that's perfectly fine.
Okay,
this article...
a friend of mine and myself have a running joke on, that Bigfoot video. It's the famous one of the Bigfoot walking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That our running joke is that the story actually behind that is that there was like a middle-aged married couple was out in the woods to roleplay their King Kong erotic play there, and somebody caught like one of them on video, and they just kind of very awkwardly walked away. And they know that that's the source of Bigfoot, but they are taking that secret to their grave.
Yeah.
They probably have at this point.
This is getting out of hand. People believe there's a monster in that. Just don't say anything. Just.
And if you know what's good for you, you'll let them believe that. We have to talk
about the King Kong thing, and that's just awkward.
Yeah. It raises the question.
Just the husband, yes, Bigfoot, and just like gradually more securely closing a closet door where the costume is.
Yeah. I must burn it. I'm sorry. You are my everything. But now I must be...
Just burning the Bigfoot costume to the whole sad funeral music from Star Wars when they burn Vader.
Thus, one chapter in my life ends and a new one begins.
Sure, we'll go with that.
The non-Bigfoot chapter. But it has to be said, though, the Bigfoot sightings do go back significantly before the invention of video camera, so...
Okay, let me have my fun.
You got to assume that if they were out in the woods, they were doing Bigfoot roleplay, not King Kong roleplay. It was actual Bigfoot roleplay. Anyway. And or a fake video, which I think we might embrace as an explanation. Yeah. I'm a little slap happy, like I said, guys. Just got off a bus. I was up.
And
with
boy,
Bigfoot.
are your arms tired.
You were up with Bigfoot. What?
I was up. Visiting a cottage where there was no Bigfoot erotica. I assure you.
Are you secretly friends with Bigfoot?
Yes.
That sounds like an old-timey regional slang for being gay. Like, the friends of. Like, the friends of Dorothy.
Friends of Bigfoot.
He speaks Latin. He knows Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That would certainly... that had been unknown to this day, but that was the secret... The secret code. Yeah, there you go. We've discovered the real reason for all this. Okay, what do we got here? Oh yeah.
Yeah, this was another thing that I would have talked about if people were interested in. I think
we're
running out of time, and this is more just to share for.
Go ahead. We can cut some of the stuff we talked about out earlier.
Yeah, probably most of the one where we
cut out all of Discworld.
I don't think we
like disappeared up our own asses talking about Discworld because it's a great series, but it was like not interesting to listen. Unless you also fans of Discworld would love it. For everyone else, it would be, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. I think people are just,
go
why
and
did we
read
start
these 35 books and come back and you'll find it funny.
Yeah. Well, they're not that... They're pretty mainstream these days. But yes, anyway. Well, we've talked about Discworld a fair amount on other shows, so that's fair.
Yeah, that's true.
Trim that down. But yes, anyway,
Ellis,
so this...
film critic and film theorist, has done one looking at the remake of Beauty and the Beast, and it is very good.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch this. What?
Legitimately watch that.
Yeah. What does she say? What are her points on this? I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
I recommend watching it because it's a very dense one, and there's a ton of stuff, like even going into like the history of the business ethos of Disney, going back to Eisner, that itself could be a full video, and but it's really where it ties into clickbait is talking about the thing that that a lot of the superfluous stuff in the movie, or stuff where the movie kind of starts to grind its own gears,
I'll bet,
comes from apparently them feeling the need to address the nitpicking complaints from the internet of the animated one.
Like what exactly?
Like how technically the Beast would have had to have been around the age of 10 or 11 years old when he gets his curse.
Okay, that's one. Right. I'm sorry. That's one that I have never understood, because where in that movie does it say that the prince is only 20? Where
they do say it's his 21st birthday.
No. I'm going to argue this, because from the whole intro backstory done with the plate glass window, he is clearly depicted as a man grown. So he is clearly in his 30s. And I will flat out reject.
Okay.
If
that's still weird because Bella's still 16, but in any case.
I'm going to debate you on that. I'll tell you why. First, they do definitely say it's his 21st birthday when the rose is going to die on his. I'm pretty sure they specifically say 21st birthday.
I didn't.
And
see
secondly,
okay, I'm going to look it up.
Yeah. And I'm almost positive it was his 21st
And I'll also
birthday.
say this, because after The Little Mermaid, Disney became very, very wise to never fully mention ages, which is why Belle's age is never mentioned.
Yeah,
no,
we don't know
okay,
exactly
no.
Belle is supposed to be 16 years old. That is something that is in the maker's notes.
Okay,
of
but
the
I'm
movie
also
itself.
going
She is
to
supposed to be
contest that
16
because she's not drawn 16.
No, she's not. And I mean, I don't consider that canon if it's not in the movie.
Right.
But I will tell
Adam, I have to own you,
yes,
because I have it up on the wiki thing, and the narrating quote is, "The rose she had offered was truly an enchanted rose, which..." God damn it, you're fucking right. Shit, 2013. Why the fuck did they put that? Fuck, I'm old.
Yep. Yes.
I was so sure
but I'll tell you this.
Why did they do that?
I don't know, but I specifically remember them saying the 21st year.
Because they hadn't learned not to mention the boy's age at that point. That's why. Because by the time they get around to doing Aladdin...
But they don't mention Belle's age, so I don't care if what they...
Well, they don't mention Belle's age because they mentioned Ariel's age, because Ariel was turning 16 in her movie, so they weren't going to mention the fact that Belle is supposed to be around the age of 16 or 17 in her movie. They weren't going to mention that.
Doesn't make sense. But I just want to quickly say, in the sequel...
I argue this because it says it would bloom until his 21st year, and technically, when we're looking at it, the problem is that the rose is wilting, not blooming.
Oh.
But this is literally getting into the same nitpicking thing, and no one...
Yeah!
And not only should I not care, no one should care.
Probably not, no.
Well, okay, I just want to say, in the sequel... The Enchanted Christmas, possibly the only good one of those.
Nobody cares about the sequel.
But they show his transformation, and he's very clearly a young boy, like prepubescent boy in that one.
Really?
Prince Adam, or whatever his name is. I know, again, that's not canon, but apparently his name's Prince Adam.
Well, they called his human form Adam during the making of the movie. That's why.
Anyway, in the sequel, he's very clearly depicted as like a young boy when he meets the fairy who he takes, or the witch, or whatever she is, who turns him into the beast in the first place. That's
interesting.
So yeah, they were definitely on board with that. And I don't know. I feel like he looked pretty young in the stained glass window. But then there's the question of how long he was the beast for too. Like, did they say specifically how long he was the beast?
They do say 10 years.
10 years, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Lumiere says it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. So basic math. But as I say, anyway, they were consistent about that when they did show it in the sequel, which may or may not be canon. But nevertheless, they clearly had considered it.
I believe all sequels are considered canon.
Yes. Well, there you go. I don't know if I want to consider.
Doesn't mean that they are good. That is a different story.
I'm going to demand you cut this out because I've embarrassed myself. But get into the better example of that is then of the stuff where, well, why were all the servants cursed along with the beast?
Oh God, that.
And them feeling to do that.
Because it's visually interesting and cute. That's all.
Now you'll be here to provide visual interest. Enjoy hell.
Oh well, that's another one. So are all the dancing plates former people and that?
That is an interesting question. There are a lot of servants in that case.
Yeah, no, but
because that's a lot of like cutlery.
That's actually answer. Oh, and Lindsay Ellis shares that clip from the commentary track where the animators are kind of very annoyed by that question because they feel like it should be obvious that no, it's not, but it's a good visual for a musical sequence.
Yeah. Although there is the one scene where Mrs. Potts is telling her kids goodnight and it's literally a cupboard of cups.
Yeah, she clearly had a lot of children.
Yeah. She had a lot of children, but that doesn't mean every single plate is a person.
Anything with a face had to have been a person. I mean, clearly.
However, I will give the live-action movie credit for one good joke, which is that when Belle is first in the palace, she sees a comb and tries to introduce herself to it, and the servants are looking at her like, that's a comb.
Yeah, no, that's actually funny.
That's funny.
That is actually funny.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Not everything in the, But, I mean, technically, if he had a few hundred servants or whatever, which is, I mean, maybe not realistic in real life, but it's a fairy tale. They always say the king had hundreds of servants.
No, actually looking at it, to run like a large manor, especially for a prince, so saying that...
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's fairy tale, but saying that, let's assume this means prince in terms of principality, not son of a king.
Right.
So, there would
Which
be a
makes sense for the setting.
Yeah, so, a number of servants for the castle numbering in the hundreds is entirely plausible.
Yeah. Now, of course, you've just raised the question of what is the beast, like, prince over? Like, there's this village.
I had always presumed and read it that it was, I mean, vaguely it was put in France, but that it vaguely, I don't know.
No,
it's definitely France.
No, they're speaking in French, and they say they're in France.
No, it's definitely France.
I presume that it means in the original fairy tale, it is just not like specifically France. It is just someplace that is far away, but near enough that you recognize stuff.
Sure. And I mean, Europe at that point might have been divided. There were lots of little tiny countries that got kind of chopped up and merged over the last 200 years. I don't even need that. I'm just kind of interested.
I'm starting to be nitpicky because Lumiere does say that they are in France, and then Cogsworth makes a joke about the architecture being Baroque. So there is a specific time period that this is supposed to be set in.
Okay,
but I don't know. Go ahead. Ink,
how I always read it is that prince was being used in the term of like Machiavelli's The Prince, where it means that's how I understand it too, because a lot of ways a prince or a princess isn't necessarily meaning that you are the son of a daughter of a king. It could also mean that you have a royal title or a noble title of some kind.
But see, I'm not even questioning. I'm like, that's fine, and it's a fairy tale anyway, so I don't even give a damn about
presumably the prince, if he actually had, and I guess maybe it just reverts to prince in that he is a noble, but if he wasn't old enough to actually be, God, I can't believe we're arguing this, granted the hereditary title of his father by the King of France, that he would have been a marquis or a duke or something, but since he was cursed before that, he simply remains the prince.
Well, Right, and there is literally no king in... This is clearly the 19th century, at which point there is no king in France, right? I don't have the history. It was the 1700s that they put the king on the... They put Louis XVI on the guillotine, and that was it, right? But I'm not even questioning, like, explain politically exactly where this is going. I'm just always curious about, in that movie... There was a prince over that entire region, and then one day he vanished into the woods, and nobody ever heard of him again? Like, what do the people of the village, are they like, hey, remember how 10 years ago we had a prince?
Truth be told, if you take into account the fact that the castle, or the very giant mansion, if you want to interpret it that way instead, is extremely secluded compared to the village.
Of course.
Like when Maurice leaves the village, he goes in the wrong direction, and he goes into the woods, and he's very clearly going far away from the village at this point. It's possible that the villagers were like kind of aware that there's this giant mansion where maybe some rich people live, but we don't care. That's how like my 10-year-old brain eventually sort of interpreted it. I was actually much younger when that movie came out.
God,
but
I can't believe that we're actually...
When you start to be cognizant of certain things, that's how I interpreted it. This is another that one hard to logic.
This is another one I have to justify, because also thinking it's a small town, and for most towns in like feudal history, their only interaction with their lord is that if there is anything is that they are the people who collect taxes. And if there's anything military-related, they have the soldiers. Other than that, the town is basically left to run itself.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's still, there must be someone who was like, okay, we've got a castle, it's out in the woods, it's secluded enough, and then it vanishes, and nobody notices that there's no leadership over the entire province, even if you assume that village is
but
whatever.
Again,
But
if you're like most of the towns, why would you? Unless there's a military thing going on. It's just, no one's been around to collect the taxes in a while. I'm not going to argue this.
I'm not going to question it.
Yeah,
let them
that is a good point.
Collect taxes from us.
Should we say anything about the prince, how he vanished when that evil witch came to visit him? Shh, don't say anything. Yeah, exactly.
Because I think that apparently the movie's a part of the curse is that everybody forgets about the castle.
I mean, that's put in the live-action one, and really, it's not needed.
No.
Yeah, no, it's not needed. I mean, it's also just fairy tale logic, and that's how it works. There are princes and kings and magic castles out in the forest all over the place in fairy tales. That's just how it works.
Right. That's how it is.
If you're arguing technically the fact that they stupidly gave a concrete timeline and everything does make it a plot hole, but then it just goes... But then, like, the answer to that is just, like, the grandfather from Princess Bride putting the book down and saying, shut up and let me read.
Pretty much.
But although it is actually funny that I'm not as familiar with France, and if you know Germany at about that time period, or Italy, they weren't solid countries. They were like tons of little states and provinces that were, and you'd say, oh, well then they said it was France. But I mean, Germany knew it was Germany, but it wasn't a coherent state at that point. It was like Prussia and states. Bavaria and all the different countries. Yeah. So technically speaking, it is possible historically that maybe France was that fractured at that point. If you were really going to delve into it, you could kind of say, oh, maybe that is actually the case in 1812 or whenever it was. I guess Napoleon probably united France. I don't know French history very well. I'm sorry.
France was united at that point.
Unfortunately, I don't know it that well either. I probably should know it a little bit better just on account of having studied art history, but here we are.
Same.
Like I say, it's funny that what we think of as Europe is actually a pretty recent invention. Like, we think of these countries... Like, Italy wasn't officially formed into one country until, like, 1945. It's surprising when you realize... You think of this ancient country, and it is, but it wasn't formally, cohered into one unit until quite recently, the 20th century. And I was actually just watching. Hey, remember I told you guys about, to slightly get off topic? Do you remember, guys? I told you about that thing where Patrick Stewart plays Lenin and that miniseries that was out there.
Yes.
I did get it. and I've been watching it, and it goes way back. It goes through like the late 19th century. It's a whole sweeping history thing, but it does get into Germany, and like at that point it was Prussia, and that's part of Germany, and under Otto von Bismarck they kind of united all of the German states into Germany in like 1870. So it's fairly recent that became one big country. So before then they would have spoken not of Germany, they would have said Prussia or Bavaria or whatever places in Germany,
or whatever
that were,
individual
relevant.
Principality you were living in.
Exactly. So that kind of makes sense when you read fairy tales, how there's just princes and princesses all over the frickin' place. It's because there were tons and tons of provinces and little bits and pieces all over the world.
Is
all
he
over
really
Europe.
a prince? So, he has an army. He lives in the big house.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you gonna argue it with him?
Nope.
He says he's a prince. He's a prince.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although it is funny that he doesn't have he has a castle, but the castle doesn't have a keep, and that's where the townspeople would normally come in to, in a siege or something. They'd all come running to the castle. So good thing that I guess they didn't get attacked at that point, which is funny because it's the movie is probably set around the time of the Napoleonic Wars, from what I can tell. So there could have been some pretty big fighting going on if they hadn't been careful. But anyway, I guess we don't know. But yeah, I do remember them saying in one of the documentaries of Beauty and the Beast, they did talk about how they had a more clear historical setting for that one than in any other Disney movie. Like they had specifically researched the fashions. The only thing that they get wrong is that they formed the Eiffel Tower at one point. And that's clearly, unless this is set in like 1890, which it isn't.
Yeah, but
in the dinner scene, they form the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, that's in Be Our Guest, which, as they pointed out, is like effectively the common tract is saying that it's like, no, when it's in a musical number, it does not have to be actually representational.
Exegete.
Like it's one of those diegetic things, isn't it?
Like there weren't fucking. Like, we're not saying in The Lion King that there were actually monkeys putting up gel filters on lights to give the appropriate lighting for I Can't Wait to Be King. No, that's an animation decision.
Yeah, it's a stylistic decision to make, make it look more visually interesting.
Running the, Art Deco print behind Simba and everyone for that musical number. Come on.
Yeah, the ground literally ripples out into a different color when he stamps his foot at the beginning of the number.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's not fucking...
Fairy tale...
There's not meerkats doing pyrotechnics for him, okay?
Well,
it's
maybe there will be in the live-action remake.
We're allowed to do the art style for something surreal for the musical numbers. These are the rules that are established.
Yeah. Well, they are making a live-action remake of Lion King, too, so maybe we'll get pyrotechnics for that. Maybe we'll see all that.
Actually, if Lindsay Ellis is right, and the theory is that a bunch of that is that they feel the need to address the criticism of the original, maybe we will get a whole thing of fucking, Timon and Pumbaa or someone running the goddamn pyrotechnics behind I Can't Wait to Be King.
Oh
why wouldn't we? That would be pointless. Sure, throw that in.
Well, I didn't see
We are not allowed to use our imaginations anymore.
I didn't see the Jungle Book live action. I'm going to assume that they'll probably do it more in the vein of that than anything else.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Well, they could also theoretically
I kind of hope they do it after the Broadway musical.
Right.
Well, that's my personal hope, is that they do it like that as well.
And have it look even weirder than the animated version. That'd be kind of great. Yeah, I'm down. I'm down for that. That'd be doing
all that sort of puppetry and stuff. I think that would actually look really beautiful, even though I understand why that was developed for stage, because it makes sense. But stylistically, it would look beautiful as a movie as well. So
see, I never saw this. I don't know why everyone somehow gets a chance to go to Broadway and see these things. I never got a chance to go to Broadway and see that show, so I would be down for that just to see what the Julie Taymor version looked like. So that would actually have a rationale for existing as opposed to a live-action version of Beauty and the Beast, even though it made more money than God. But I haven't bothered to watch yet, because why would you? It's especially frustrating that, as you say, they blow it out to 2.5 hours when the original is this very carefully brisk, well-told story that doesn't have a wasted moment in it.
No, it is very fine-tuned.
Even if you watch the version that has the extended scene that includes the Human Again song, it's still one song, so it's maybe an extra 5 minutes that they're adding total.
Yeah.
So
and they cut it out.
And truth be told, it was definitely a part that they did not need to include, because I've seen the extended cut with it. It's definitely not something they needed to include. And I think the main reason why they included it is because Human Again is in the stage musical, which is still running.
Sure.
So
I mean, an extra song you can always excuse, but it's a very tight, like animation. All the Disney movies, they're very tightly told stories. There's no flab on them narratively. They get everything done as fast as possible. Yep. That used to be what you were trying to do with movies, and especially animated movies. That was the rule. You're trying to convey as much information as quickly as you can, which is why all the bloat of so many movies these days is kind of frustrating. Anyway, let's not rant about that. Anyway, I'll watch the Lindsay Ellis YouTube and
it's definitely a good watch. Pretty much anything she's made is a good watch.
Is she the one who did the video on the Hercules, the Beautiful Hot Mess, or whatever?
Yeah.
But one thing that I wanted to tie this back to clickbait is that there's some actually very enjoyable kind of subtweety-esque salt and shade thrown on her former job and definitely former peers about people who nitpick movies for YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cinema Sins and
what's
the other one? Everything Wrong With.
That's Cinema Sins then, but specific. Well, if you were going, definitely those ilk, but if there was a specific personal call out, it would be for the Nostalgia Critic.
Yep, okay. And everything with Channel Awesome.
Yeah.
Because she, at one point, used to be a part of that website, and now she never wants to ever be associated with them ever again. So...
Well, it sounds like it's understandable, given everything that happened. But, but it's true. I mean, from what I've seen, those really are... I mean, as always, it's a case of, well, this is something that was maybe a little fun, and everyone took it too far and started to think that was the way to criticize movies. I want someone to do movie reviews that, deliberately embrace nonsensical Twin Peaks Season 3, and talk about how great it is that there's none of this, that doesn't enlighten anything, that doesn't have any theories, it's just like, it's so great that this doesn't make sense, and there's a glowing orb, and it's in black and white, and Hiroshima, and for no reason, that kind of thing. Anyway. But it would be funny if we could find a way to do that humorously, to just do reviews where it's like, the opposite of what even we just did.
Yeah, we weren't able to criticize that without falling down our own assholes, so...
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
We need to,
We got into a brief description, and there was like, well, where does this timeline coincide with the French Revolution?
Well, that also sort of depends on which French Revolution you're talking about.
Yep. Well, we're doing it to be silly, though. We're not doing it to seriously get... The answer is, it's a friggin' fairy tale. That's what happens in fairy tales. There's a prince out in the woods. Shut up. Yeah. And as you say, the dad, Columbo telling us all to shut up in The Princess Bride.
Basically.
God, what's his name? I can't remember his name.
No,
I'm very
he's
tired.
Columbo now.
He's Columbo.
Not only is it that, the actor played Columbo, but since he's only credited as the grandfather, it is my fucking canon now that actually is Columbo reading the story to his grandson.
It's a perfect fit. It fits the character.
We have uncovered the Columbo Matlock expanded universe.
Oh, no.
Columbo Matlock and possibly, I don't know, what else did...
Well, of course, Murder, She Wrote.
Murder, She Wrote, yeah. That's right.
Which has a tie-in because, of course, Mrs. Potts.
Yeah, she was Mrs. Potts.
See, it's all connected! Quinine!
Quinine?
QAnon.
Oh, no.
Like they murdered someone with quinine? Oh, quinine, Murder, She Wrote. Oh, gotcha. Right. How does that relate to quinine?
Quinine is QAnon, remember?
Yeah, I remember, but how does it relate to Murder, She Wrote?
Because they're all connected. Stop.
Oh. Jessica Fletcher would have solved the quinine case.
Or, according to one fan theory, killed a bunch of people and framed them.
Oh yeah, that's the ever popular. That's why she was always around when people were being murdered. They did. Did I tell you guys that about? Speaking of Columbo too, one of the inspirations for Columbo was the Father Brown mysteries by G.K. Chesterton, and because he was the same thing. He was kind of a little, shy guy. He was unprepossessing. He wasn't. No, people didn't take him seriously as like this hard-ass detective, but he was a genius. And there was a great bit in one of the books where the guy basically asks what happens to all these sleuths, and he said, the guy said, "How come you always happen to be around when there's a murder? Like, what's going on with that?" And the guy basically goes, "Oh yeah, I murdered all those people. That's what happened." And they're like, "What?" And he goes, and then he goes, and he was joking. He was like, "Yeah, no, I figured out. I imagined what it would be like to kill them. In my mind, I killed them all. Blah blah blah." But it does raise that exact issue of like, why is the sleuth always just the amateur sleuth always just happens to be around when there's a murder going on? And that was written in like the 20s and the 30s, so
reasons.
Well, I mean, the honest answer is that if they weren't, then it wouldn't be a story worth telling. It would be, well, this guy murdered his wife and got away with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like the thing there for, it's like, how could the evolutionary work? Because, the fetus develops the heart just at the time when the fetus is big enough to need a heart. How does that work? And the answer is because every other version of that where that didn't work out, the fetus fucking died.
Right. And wouldn't be around for us to observe.
That very specific example was me subtweeting a creationist professor I had in college.
Oh, I know. Yeah, the whole routine.
Oh, jeez.
The anthropic principle.
Right, but no, that's the thing, because it's like, no, okay, simply assume that there are many more murders, and those to which there is not a Columbo or Monk around simply go unsolved.
Yeah. And what's funny in the Father Brown stories is a lot of the things he solves aren't murders. It just weird things happen, and people think there might have been a murder, and then he actually debunks that there was a murder, which I always kind of liked. It's like it's not a wall-to-wall cavalcade of murders when he's around. He solves other weird little quirky cases and stuff as well, so I kind of like that too. But anyway, we should wrap it up. It's been 2 hours. My God, we're going to have to trim this down a bit.
We did a horrible job. And it is.
We did a great job.
It's okay.
That's the magic of editing, baby.
Adam will have fun with this one.
We will. All right, so we've rambled all over the web.
Idiot.
Oh yes, sir. I will edit it for you. All right, so to all of you watching, I'm away to whack at this extra long version of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. I mean, Destroy All Clickbait. And turn it into something watchable. For all of you out there on the web, shine your shoes and howl at the moon. I don't even know how to sign off with these shows anymore. Just wanted to mention we're now on YouTube with the playlist Destroy All Clickbait on my channel, Prankster36. And all the links we've discussed in today's show are there underneath the video, which is a great place to leave comments. We also have links to our Patreons there. If you like what you hear, please consider becoming a patron for one or both of us, me and Ing. You'll get access to comics and art, as well as getting to hear this show 2 weeks early. I also wanted to give a shout out to Jack Feerick, who wrote our theme song. And finally, a reminder, I'm on Twitter as Prankster36, Ing is Ingdammit, and Avi is Aviviavai. A-V-I-V-I-A-V-A-I. You can follow one or all of us for updates on Twitter, including notifications for when we're doing the Twitch stream, because we do record the show live on Twitch, so that's fun, so why not join us for that? But stay frosty, and make sure that you don't follow down don't follow any cybernetic will-o'-the-wisps off into the dark reaches of the winter web. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time, guys. Take care. Bye-bye from all of us at Destroy All Clickbait.